Can Notre Dame run it back and find themselves back in the national title picture here in 2025? It's a big question, but I think it's warranted after what last season was. And a lot of that, I believe, having to do with the Marcus Freeman effect, if you will, of what happened last year in South Bend and getting Notre Dame to that final game of the entire college football season. We'll unpack that right now, but if you're a college football fan, if you're a Notre Dame fan, first off, Notre Dame fans, we had a lot of y'all join us. By joining us, I mean by being subscribed to this channel during the run that y'all's team took this past college football playoff. If you're new, welcome. Make sure you are subscribed. I just wanted to appreciate Notre Dame fans that are already dialed in. And if you haven't yet gotten subscribed, no time like the present. We appreciate you in advance for rocking with us. So, what will it take to get back to a national championship, to play in Miami this coming season? What will it take? Well, first of all, you start the year off in Miami, so maybe some bookends there for our good people out there in South Bend. Maybe 2 trips to Miami, which could be nice as you start playing the Canes. But the schedule in itself, while it's tough, I don't think from a roster talent standpoint, Notre Dame will be like wildly outmatched in any of these games. You're at Miami to start. You play Texas A&M. There's still some landmines on your schedule, like you go to Arkansas and ask Tennessee about how that is. It's not the easiest place in the world to play. You play Boise State, a college football playoff team. Now, thank goodness for you, there's no Ashton Genty. USC, I think, is going to be sneaky, and you get them at home. You play Syracuse. We'll see what happens there. But at the end of the day here, Notre Dame, I think, has everything you need, on paper at least, to be in position to once again compete for a national championship. From a roster, from a schedule, all those things, I think they still very much so have all the pieces to get it done. Now, to start the year, it looks a little bit daunting, but if you're thinking about what Notre Dame is overall and the run they have to be on to make the college football playoff yet again, you probably just need to split Miami and A&M. Now, if you're Notre Dame, you say, well, heck, we'll win both of them. We don't care. Yeah, I hear you, but if you just split those two, and I'll take it a step further, I think if Notre Dame drops another game somewhere along the way, as long as it's respectable opponent-wise and score-wise, I think a 10-2 Notre Dame, while that may not be music to your ears, and it's not my prediction, but if they do find themselves with 2 losses at the end of the regular season, the unique part about where Notre Dame is right now is they have more benefit of the doubt than I think ever before, at least in modern college football. Because think about it this way. Previously, if Notre Dame had 2 losses and they're not playing in a conference title game, you have the average, Twitter fingers hit the app and say, Notre Dame has to be left out. We can't allow them to make the playoff because what's going to happen is they'll play Clemson and Alabama, whoever, and just get boat raced like we've seen in the past against those caliber of teams. That's not the world we're living in anymore. Marcus Freeman has rebranded Notre Dame, as we've talked about now ad nauseum on this show. Notre Dame just played for a national championship. So I'm not saying this is where you want to find yourself. I'm not even telling you this is where you will find yourself. But if you're 10-2, that discussion around the Irish being in the playoff more than ever before, I think, has some juice that favors the Irish. Now, the big question I think everyone's asking is, well, who's playing quarterback? I love Kenny Minchey. I think it's probably going to be Steve Angeli. I think it'll be a battle between him and C.J. Carr. That's just my opinion. We'll see what happens during spring football. But the encouraging thing, if I'm a Notre Dame fan, is just the discussion around a C.J. Carr and a Steve Angeli in that battle. It's if you ask 10 different people, I think they'd be relatively split. Maybe you get one other person favoring Angeli because of what you saw from him in the Orange Bowl. But the bottom line is there's not some Grand Canyon between what Steve Angeli is as a quarterback or C.J. Carr. I think Notre Dame fans in general could feel pretty good about rolling with either of those cats. And the word that comes to my mind here is competition, obviously with it being a quarterback competition, so there's not a ton of reaching to do there. But what I mean by that is you look at what Georgia was with Carson Beck and Brock Vandagriff when those 2 cats were going at it for the QB1 job in Athens. There was a certain sense that whether it was Vandagriff or whether it was Beck before he did what he did in the spring game, if you were a Georgia fan, you felt pretty confident about either of those guys rolling out there for you. That's the same way I think you feel if you're a Notre Dame fan between Angeli and Carr. You feel like whoever wins the battle, good. They won that battle on merit. They won that battle because they must have balled behind closed doors and taken that job from the other. If that's the case, and that competition brings the most out of both those guys, okay, we're good. We can roll that way. Because Riley Leonard, he was a special player, but I think when you look at Mike Denbrock and how he wants to run his offense, they want to be a little bit more wide open. They want to push the ball downfield. That's, I think, who Mike Denbrock is if you gave him some truth serum. They want to throw the football a little bit more than they did last season. And the thing that I think a lot of us saw in the college football playoff, especially those last two games, Notre Dame's got some guys to throw the football too. Like Jaden Greathouse going for over 100 yards against the best defenses they played in Penn State and Ohio State respectively. That dude's got to see the football. Jordan Faison was kind of a playmaker all year for Notre Dame, especially in that first game against Indiana. He's got to impact the game. And so the idea now that you, on paper at least, with what we know about these guys, have a more prototypical thrower of the football than you did a season ago, this offense, I think, might even be a little bit more in Mike Denbrock's image than it was previously. And I think that's a good thing. And oh, by the way, you still have Jeremiah Love, which at this point in time feels safe to say he's probably the best returning running back in college football, off the top of the head at least. Now, defensively, you lose some pieces. Obviously, you lose your DC. Chris Ash is going to run the show. And I said this when we talked about Chris Ash getting the job. You can tell me whoever's the DC is the DC, but like as long as Marcus Freeman is the head coach, I trust what that defense is going to be. I trust what they're going to look like. The talent is the talent. Like Leonard Moore is back. Obviously, Drake Bowen is back. There's a lot of guys that you feel excited about, but at the core of what this defense is, that's who Marcus Freeman is. Like Marcus Freeman cut his teeth on the defensive side, obviously played defense when he was playing ball. That's going to be the part of the team that I think is most personal to him. And whatever side of the football is personal to your head coach, I think is the side of football you can trust. Same thing goes for Georgia and Kirby Smart. Same thing goes for Oklahoma and Brent Venables, so on and so forth. And on the opposite side, offensive coaches, Steve Sarkisian, Lane Kiffin, when was the last time those offenses were just downright bad? So you see what I'm saying? That's the same thought process I have around Marcus Freeman. You can trust him with his specialty, and I think that's safe to say around Notre Dame, even with some of the things that they lose. So when you talk about Notre Dame in relation to the rest of, the sport, I think a lot of people will be quick to say, yes, Notre Dame's good. However, they don't have a roster on par with a fill in the blank with whatever team you want to next. On par with a Georgia, on par with a Penn State, on par with a Ohio State, whatever. And some of this, too, will have to do with who Notre Dame draws in the first round of the college football playoff and their path and all that. We've seen that firsthand now, given what last year was. But it's funny we mentioned Georgia and Penn State kind of subconsciously. I think both those teams had a better roster than the Notre Dame last year. Like you watch both those games, I think Penn State, we did a breakdown of the top 10 players going into that game. 7 players in that Notre Dame-Penn State game, we said were on the Penn State side. But why? Who did we pick? Notre Dame in that spot. Why? Because of who Marcus Freeman is. Because as long as Notre Dame has those Marcus Freeman find-a-way kind of traits to them, the unquantifiables, that's going to make them a very difficult out every single game, every single year, especially when it's crunch time, when it's playoff time, and the chips are stacked. So with that being the case, you can say whatever you want about the quarterback position, whatever you want about the roster, and however they stack up to the rest of college football. Spoiler, we think that Notre Dame is closing that gap as we speak. But as long as Marcus Freeman is setting that temperature and his team is going to take on his persona, which we've seen them do, Notre Dame is going to be right there in the mix. I expect them to once again be in the playoff, once again be in the national title picture, and I am very, very excited to see what they are even moving forward past 2025 with the way that he has rebranded Notre Dame as a true destination for top talent from the high school level and from the portal level here moving forward. So, can Notre Dame pick up where they left off? Fair question. We'll tell you right now, though, absolutely. Make sure you're subscribed. Appreciate y'all being locked in. Cato on the ones and twos for myself, JD PicKell. We appreciate y'all. We love y'all. We will keep this party rolling, and we will see y'all next time.